If you've been listening to the Otherplace for a while, you'll know that the Fenrayne Files began as bonus episodes on the podcast. While coming up with ideas for Fenrayne Files episodes, I decided to do a series on the people of Fenrayne, sort of like what I'm doing right now. I wrote up some entries about Anza and Grenker and everyone else, and I asked my friends to read them for the show. Then I had the idea to make it a fun little audio exercise with some people gathering around in a wintry tavern, and it got bigger than I could manage with other projects going on, and fell to the wayside. Since I've gone much more in-depth with it on this show, I haven't shared any of those original recordings from my friends. They're all wonderful little readings by talented people, and you'll hear bits of one of those readings today. Stonefolk are people of the mountains. They're slow-moving, slow-talking, and a little difficult to decipher. Stonefolk have bodies made of stone, yet they walk and talk like anyone else in Fenrayne. They say they're distantly related to Vargr, who have hot metal running through their veins. Stonefolk have simple, almost mask-like faces. Some are smooth, others craggy, and they're all hard to read. The stones they're made of are as varied as the stones that you can find on the earth. Some are granite, some are onyx. There are even legends of a Stonefolk saint made of crystal clear diamond. As Stonefolk move around, their stones grind together, and you can catch glimpses of that molten core underneath. But sometimes you don't see the core, like in the case of that crystal clear Stonefolk saint. Each Stonefolk is unique, like a treasure produced by the earth itself. Nobody knows where Stonefolk come from. There are no young Stonefolk, and Stonefolk don't talk about it. Stonefolk don't sleep, breathe, or eat, except as a courtesy, as far as anyone knows. As Stonefolk age, they slow down. Tasks that used to take minutes take hours or even days. But a Stonefolk will live as long as they want to. Passing into death is their own choice, and most Stonefolk will go happily, knowing their days were well spent. There's an old set of texts called the Cleopatra Glossaries. Dating from the mid-10th century, these glossaries lend us a lot of information on how people used to talk, way back when. In this text, we find mention of the Roman god Orcus, who you would probably recognize if I had called him Pluto, the god of death and the ruler of the underworld. The text describes Orcus, or Pluto, as Orc, Þyrs, Otha, Hell, Devil, or in modern English, Goblin, Spectre, or Hell Devil. Can you see where I'm going with this? Þyrs were once orcs in pre-season 2 Otherplace. When I was researching and working on reframing the people of the world, that second word in that phrase, Þyrs, Spectre, caught my attention. At this point, I was thinking less about names for dead things, otherwise Þyrs would have easily been a type of ghost. But Þyrs became Þyrs, these odd beings partially inspired by humans and their demons from the book series His Dark Materials. We've got a special guest to introduce the Þyrs today, so listen up and hold your questions until the end.
Gather round, young ones, and let me tell you of one of the most unique and unusual peoples which call this land home. Let me tell you of the nomads, known as the Þyrs. It cannot be denied that Fenrayne is home to many a varied species, from the walking souls of the mountain that are the Vargr, to the inquisitive hilly sporfolk, to the Isian and the Onza we pass in the street every day. However, when I say that even amongst such variety the Þyrs are unique, I do not exaggerate. For, you see, whereas we are all individuals, a Þyr is in fact a magical union of two beings, bonded soul and spirit by ancient magics which weave the two creatures together. The first half of this union, and the side which you are more likely to first acknowledge, is the arid. An arid is a mammalian hominid, much like a human or a helbling, with skin tones that generally range from grey to brown with the various colours of autumn in between. They stand roughly the same height as an average human, obviously variations always apply, but an average human height, and bear small bony horns upon their head. A juvenile arid, also known as a skeffling, is born to arid parents and raised within the community. However, they do not earn a true name or are acknowledged as part of their clan truly until they undergo the bonding and properly become a Þyr. But what is the bonding, I hear you ask, and who do they bond with? Well, it is here that the magic truly begins. The other half of the Þyrs is a small, intelligent bird known as a Þyrs, roughly the size of a sparrowhawk or magpie, although, as with all such things, there is variation. A Þyrs is possessed of a deep well of primal magic, which allows it to forge the bond with an ard through a simple but deeply mystical ritual. And here I should say that while the mystical part of the ritual is fairly brief, deep but brief, the ritual itself has grown and grown to be quite a protracted celebration, a true coming of age for both the Ard and the Þyrs. And when the ritual has concluded, the two beings are one shared soul across two bodies. Both parties retain their own personality and their own autonomy, but their destinies are forever entwined and inseparable. Even death cannot sever the bond, for should one half die, the other will swiftly follow. Both parties gain from the bonding, but precisely what changes it causes are a closely held secret of Þyrs, for fairly understandable reasons, I'm sure you agree.
The actual ritual which bonds the Ard and the Þyrs is a mystery to outsiders, and I'm gonna keep it a mystery to you as well, dear listeners, at least for a little while longer. What I can do is answer a few questions that will no doubt arise. As you heard Adam say, before Þyrs are Þyrs, they're Ards, or Scufflings. They do not have names and are only referred to as Ard. Þyrs and Þyrs do not live together before undergoing their ritual. Þyrs are a migratory bird and travel across Fenrayne yearly. Þyrs are intelligent for birds, but aren't as intelligent as people until after their connection with the Ard. Once the two are connected, a Þyrs can travel away from their Þyrs, but not far. The tug of the soul connecting them is too painful, and most Þyrs and Þyrs stay close to each other most of the time. Why would they want to separate anyway? For a non-Þyrs to call a Þyrs an Ard is a terrible insult. The word is not really used outside of Þyrs communities, and then only to call their children. To call a Þyrs an Ard is to call them half a person. There are three unique cultural groups of Þyrs living in Fenrayne.
The first are the oceanic Þyrs, who long ago forsook the land to live in large flotillas. They originate from the northwesternmost corner of Fenrayne, and although the main families are almost entirely sea-dwelling, they do maintain some small outposts in Nordia for access to materials not easily acquired on the high seas. In the peaks and valleys of the spine can be found the second cultural group, the Þyrs. Somewhat more gregarious than the other two, the Þyrs frequently travel into Girdland and the neighbouring countries to trade, celebrate and barter, and it is probably not an exaggeration to say that most Þyrs that you encounter will be a Þyr. The final group, the Þyrs, wander the high desert of the scorched sands. They use the meagre resources of the cracked earth to create alchemical masterpieces. They trade with bands of travellers crossing the vast wastes. Now, it is said that in the scorched sands, the legends tell of a Wödr city. It has no name, but it is built into the very rock of a tall sandstone spire, one of 3 spires known as the 3 Warriors. The Þyrs have carved their homes into the rock for centuries, and tunnels permeate the spire like honeycomb. The third of the spires is home to a tradition unique to the Þyrs, however, one considered rightly dangerous by most folk in the country. They've carved into the spire small niches, and over the centuries they place their dead in these niches. Over time the dead mummify in the dryness and heat or are picked over by scavenging animals. Travellers say in whispered voices, and not without a degree of quite understandable concern, that it's only a matter of time before a necromancer comes along, and the Þyrs have done the dirty work of preserving an army for them. Pray it does not happen in our time, children. Pray it does not happen in our time.
Wödr is a Proto-Indo-European word for water. Another word that came from Wödr is otter. We'll hear about them in a minute, but the suffixes of the two subspecies of Wödr came from the Norwegian words for river and ocean. Wödr are all about the water. The Wödr species actually derived from a player's request. In the Otherplace Season 2, Joy wanted to play a custom species based on otters for the character of Tulana. Wödr are small, fur-covered people who are just as comfortable in the water as on dry land. They have long torsos and short limbs, and are balanced by a long, sturdy tail. Their soft, dense fur ranges from chestnut to golden. Their feet are webbed, and their tails guide them through the canals and waves when swimming along the southern coast of Fenrayne. Like Isian, there are a couple subspecies of Wödr. Each has an evolutionary advantage in their natural watery homes, though many have ventured north into Fenrayne and found new homes in the towns and cities of its countries. Wödr elf live in the rivers near the city of Gildr. They usually come up just past the waist of a human or Þyrs. They live in freshwater rivers and canals and are very social with their fully terrestrial neighbors. Wödr elf are quite good at two things. The first is fishing. You'll find Wödr elf selling their fresh catches in most markets in southern Fenrayne. The second is building. Wödr elf have formed societies like the Builders' Trove Society. These groups, while builders in their own rights, work to keep the costs of construction and construction materials fair across the countries of Fenrayne. They've butted heads a few times with the Fellowship in their construction of towers and their monopolies on particular building materials in Gildr. The Builders' Trove, while started by Wödr, has since opened its doors to builders of all species, and its influence has spread from Gildr to Hearth to Brightport. If you travel down to the south and to the sea, you're more likely to run into a Wödr have. Wödr haves are larger than Wödr elf, usually coming to chest height on a human or Þyrs. Wödr have tails are more muscular than their freshwater counterparts because they're more likely to have to deal with ocean waves, tempests, and gales. The largest groups of Wödr have in Fenrayne can be found near the Teeth, north of Volk, and the Tines, west of Brightport. These Wödr have build elaborate homes on the stone spires that jut from the surface of the ocean, which give both locations their names. They're a bit more isolated than Wödr elves simply because of the places they inhabit, though you'll often find them in coastal towns and cities as well. Living near the waters and waves, they have a similar relationship to necromancers and the dead that the Seekith do. While Wödr elves still have to deal with the walking dead often enough, Wödr have, at least those living in the Teeth and Tines, typically don't have the same problem. But there are still a few dead things that cause them worry. Wraiths are the most common issue. A wraith is a dead spirit, meaning they don't have a body, of someone who died tragically or traumatically at sea. Like any ghost, a wraith will stick close to the thing that ties it to the earth, but among stony spires and massive waves, that thing can be difficult to find. Wraiths don't have the issue with moving water that most other ghosts do, and can float above the waves as they please. To stop the issue before it even starts, many Wödr have and Seekith communities set beacons on ocean spires to guide or warn ships of dangerous passages. In addition, many of these communities send their young people off to the Applegate School for the Paranormal Arts and other ghost hunting academies on the mainland. And with that, we've heard about the most common types of people in Fenrayne. But what about the uncommon ones? Fenrayne is home to a great many people who just aren't seen every day, walking around Brightport, or Willowbriar, Tor, or South Shore. 3 such people have been seen on the Otherplace so far, but I assure you, there are more, and perhaps we'll talk about them someday. The first are Kilpie. Tulana, Tekoa, and Roberto fought an undead one in the Battle of Vane. The second are Vargr, whom Calum encountered northeast of Highreach. And the third, Calum encountered in his cousin's home, where dinner was served by a small bird. We're not going to talk about the bird today, but let them serve as an example of Fenrayne's diversity of intelligent species. The name for Kilpies comes from Kelpies of Scottish folklore. Kelpies are water dwellers, and that's about the only similarity they have to Kilpies. Kilpies are large reptiles that live in the swampy land between the eastern and western Spine Mountains. These highlands are covered in thousands of lakes and minor waterways. Few roads cross the highlands, but the innovators of Hearth have built a rail line connecting their city to Highreach in the north and Gildr in the east. Kilpies are large, usually between 7 and 8 feet tall. They're covered with scaly skin, which stays soft in their muddy pools. If a Kilpie leaves the lakes for an extended period of time, their scales tend to harden, unless properly maintained and moisturized. Kilpie spend the majority of their time in the water, but they're not amphibious. Kilpie have big, sharp, bony beaks, which they use for hunting fish and other swampy creatures to eat. Their hands and feet are tipped with short claws, and they have small eyes and small ears. They don't have the keenest sight or hearing. Most Kilpie live a pretty isolated existence, staying in their lakes and ponds and not traveling far from the highland lakes. Kilpie have adapted to their isolation and poor hearing with voices appropriately large for such large people. Kilpie conversations echo across the highland lakes as loud as the thunder in the lightning bluffs far to the west. When travelers set out across the fens, it's considered good luck to hear two Kilpies in conversation. It means the road is wet, and while slogging through puddles may be unpleasant, there probably aren't any dead afoot. In Norse mythology, the Vargr are legendary wolves like Fenrir. J.R.R. Tolkien took the anglicized version of the name, Warg, and created giant wolves that served as mounts for the orcs of his world. In Tolkien's works, the wargs are inherently evil. In Fenrayne, the Vargr are a little more complicated than that. Vargr isolate themselves by choice. They've done such a good job of it that most people in Fenrayne haven't even heard of them. Most Vargr live deep in the forests of Fenrayne, and in particular the vast Weald, an enormous forest south of Hearth, across the slice from Gildr. They live in packs, and each pack claims their own territory, with little overlap. Life is harsh for Vargr, and the strong quickly rise in the pack, and sometimes the weak are left behind. Vargr are covered with tattoos and piercings of bone, metal, or wood. These tattoos are a symbol of power, and are earned through battle, hunts, and other feats of strength. Two things make Vargr unique among the people of Fenrayne: a special sixth sense that they have, and an ability colloquially known as the Thunderbark. The Vargr don't have a name for the Thunderbark, because it's just something they do. This particular form of magic allows them to travel vast distances almost instantaneously, though a traveling Vargr does need to know where they're going. And when they bark, the air around them heats and quickly expands and contracts, leading to a loud boom. Their sixth sense goes hand in hand with this ability. Vargr are able to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Knowing where you are is pretty handy when you can travel extreme distances in the blink of an eye. In addition to helping them with navigation, their sensitivity to magnetic fields also allows them to know when a thunderstorm is coming. I hope you enjoyed this short journey into the world of Fenrayne. We'll see you next time for more about the world and the people in it. This was the last episode in our series about the people of Fenrayne, and the suggestion box is open for our next episode or series of episodes. Did something stand out to you in the last few episodes? Is there something I should elaborate on? Send me a question or a topic on Twitter or Discord, and I might answer it in a future episode. Thanks to Zach, Crystal, AJ, and Drunklegrog who asked questions featured in this episode. If you're interested in our world, be sure to check out the Otherplace podcast. Each season, we follow a new group of adventurers as they journey across Fenrayne, uncovering mysteries and trying to save the world from the encroaching darkness. You can find the Otherplace wherever you get your podcasts. The Fenrayne Files is a production of Nightcast Creative. To learn more about us and the podcasts we make, visit nightcastcreative.com.